seems so sheltered and so cold. Sometimes I wonder, what would Jesus have to say if he were here to see the world that we have sold? But I know him well, he'd simply smile at the sky. Tell me why, oh, Jesus would reply. I'd like to know what makes a holy man. Why has the world bestowed its crown?
Hello folks, my name is Alan Bird and I am your host of this segment of Hearts for the Homeless. Welcome. Today, a very special show. We'll be talking about my favorite organization, and especially so at this time, Homeless Not Hopeless Incorporated. I have guests with me today, Mark Halstead, who is the president of Homeless Not Hopeless. We have his wife, Marianne Halstead, who is the vice president and the financial director of it. And we have Billy Bishop, who, as with myself, this is getting a little complicated, folks, are now both part of this organization. So we'll get to that in the end, where Billy and I are fitting in on this. But Homeless Not Hopeless is an innovative, creative program that began a little bit over a year ago, a new approach, and in looking back at it, really the only sensible approach that has just taken so long to come into being on how best to help the homeless population. We as workers and systems tend to do things for and to the homeless, and I think the hope has always been, will a day come where the homeless can begin to do for themselves? So let me turn to you, Mark, and you can kind of share with us this idea, this dream, this hope that both you and Marianne had, and how it got started.
Well, the story's getting a little long in the tooth now, but actually we were both homeless, and of course I was part of your Overnights of Hospitality program, and through some conversations that we started while I was still part of that program, discussing how homeless people could help themselves, we started to form some ideas that came to fruition after Marianne and I met. And frankly, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have gotten started at all. But the idea of forming our own corporation, which seemed like such a harebrained scheme, was sort of a whisper in my ear from you. Whether you recall that or not, I don't know. But I went home. We were actually staying in a motel. You know, I can't say we were going home. We were both still homeless. I stayed in a motel, and I went back to the motel, and I mentioned that to Marianne, and I went to work, and the next day when I came home from work, so I was working at nights at the time, she had all the paperwork that she had gotten off the internet, and she told me, I said, well, isn't it kind of hard? And she says, well, it's not as hard as you think. And I said, well, okay, well, let's, you know, and I'm as much of a skeptic as anybody, and I didn't know what to make of it. But in a very short order, she convinced me that it was very feasible, and we started from nothing. I mean, we really had nothing. We were living in a motel. We used a Wi-Fi signal that was hanging out there. You know, we don't even know who it was. I have said on this program, I think I'd like to be able to thank that person, because if it wasn't for them, we may never have gotten started at all. So it's been a wonderful thing, and of course we, in very short order, what we did was we got an offer from our wonderful benefactor to put up money if we could find a house. And we found a house. Again, Marianne got on Craigslist, found a house in less than a day, as I recall. She had a house that turned out to be the house. And within a month after that, the house next door opened up. It's just been this wonderful, it's the grace of God. It's just, it all happened in such a short period of time, and all we had to do was be like the Old Testament prophets and just go ahead and do. And we went ahead and did what was necessary, and the Lord provided. And as a result, we're now a year old. It's just hard to believe where that year's gone, but we're a year old, and we provide not only housing for 13 people. We provide supportive services for 4 others. And then of course the 2 people, us, that lived there, you know, in our own program house, because we didn't have jobs, we didn't have anything. And for us to be able to do this has just been such a wonderful experience. But now we provide other services. We provide transportation. Mary Ann today was able to help somebody get in school that needed to get in school, and she, you know, the poor kid had talked to the people at the school, and they were starting to run red tape around his head, and she went over there and in a matter of a couple of hours had all of that taken care of.
You know, when I think of you two, I sort of, you know, together you guys are just incredible, but I sort of see you're the guy with the vision and she's the one with the plan. You know, you can just articulate ideas, hopes and dreams so well, and then kind of like the way you said it, you came home and said, well, what do you think about this? And the next thing you know, she's clicking away. So why don't you kind of share, how, is that kind of the way it happened?
That's very much the way it happened. Mark has always been kind of the ideas, and I take his ideas and I run with them and just do whatever I can. I'm much more comfortable in that kind of supportive role. That's where I'm happiest. And
well, your organization has been incredible, how you built this thing up, and it is complicated. It's complicated for people that are schooled and trained and have been doing this. I mean, nobody has done this.
You're right, and nobody has done it. But a lot of what we did was just use common sense. And that's what I've tried. In the last few months, we've started training house managers to kind of take over some of the aspects of my day-to-day job. And these are individuals who've come out of the homeless community, and we're training them to run the houses in our stead. And I keep telling them, just use common sense. When you're dealing with a problem, use common sense. That's the best way to deal with it. When you've got a resident in crisis, use common sense. And they're starting to see it, and they're starting to get it. And really that's what it boiled down to. Mark and I used common sense when we dealt with issues, when we dealt with problems, when we dealt with successes. We dealt with them with common sense.
But why? I mean, you look at the way homelessness has been addressed, not just here but throughout the country, and it's agencies and organizations that set up these programs and then, in a sense, do it to the homeless. So what was the magic? I mean, how did it all just seem to kind of click together that do we need an organization, an agency to continue to do for us? It's kind of like suddenly, the old saying, you can give a person a fish or you can teach them how to fish. You guys seem to just come up with the idea, let's go fishing.
Well, a lot of it had to do with, Mark spent a little over a year homeless here on the Cape prior to our starting all of this. And I've spent the majority of the last 20 years on and off homeless. So I've got extensive, I joke oftentimes that when you pull up the definition for chronic homeless person, my picture should be plastered right there beside it. So I've got a lot of experience in what's lacking out there, what the organizations that are here just aren't able to accomplish. And that was where we decided to target. We were trying to...
What can't they accomplish, and how did you come up with the way that you would be able to accomplish it, where they, the trained professional places, were missing the mark?
It's interesting because we had this conversation on the way up here. It's because we take people one at a time. Our goal is to help one individual at a time. The organizations that are out there, the masses, the majority of them, they take and they want to help the masses. They're not looking at it as an individualistic approach. And that's what you have to do. You have to take each individual and you have to start from A and take them all the way to Z. Whatever that takes. The organizations that are out there, they take you to F or G and then they drop you and send you on your way. And you're floundering. So our approach was, no, that's not what's going to ultimately help somebody. We need to pick them up, and we need to start them here and take them all the way to here, all the way till they're in independent housing and it's sustainable and they have all their life skills under their belts and they have all of these things. That's something that the organizations don't do. They take a piece of it and they want to help the masses with that piece, and then another organization wants to help the masses with this piece, but what about this piece in here and
Well,
down
I think
here?
part of their struggle is, they have, because they're an organization and they have to have paid staff and all of that, so they end up needing to deal with large numbers as possible. They need to make sure people get services that they just simply have to get because the insurance will pay for it. So therefore, you need to do the counseling, you need to do this, you need to do that. So it maybe isn't as individualized. And you guys have done this for, and you do need help. And we are exploring ways because, like any other organization, but for what it's costing to house these homeless is really a fraction.
It literally
than
is.
any other place.
And until a month ago, we had no paid staff. Every single individual who was involved with our organization was there on a volunteer basis. Mark, myself, and the rest of our board of directors, every single person was a volunteer.
It was literally grassroots. Right
Very
on the
much so.
street.
You know, and the neat thing is our very first paid position was offered to our very first graduate, who came into our program when we opened the doors and graduated into independent housing and chose to come back and volunteer his time and volunteer his time. And we finally felt that it was, just right to give him a little bit of something to help pay for fuel expenses and get car repairs and things like that. So it's really been a full circle with him.
Usually when you hear about homeless people kind of getting together and getting into this place, you end up with the drinking or the drugging, and then it falls apart, and then everybody shudders at the thought whenever they hear a few people are going to get together again. And Billy, you could probably speak to that because you've been around for a long time, of how that usually just falls apart, but it didn't.
It didn't. I was the worst devil's advocate there was this whole organization when it first started. I was the guy who said, no way, this is never going to work. You guys are crazy. But
And why didn't you feel that it would work? That it would not work?
You have to understand that the people that I deal with every day are the part of society that people look at and say, they made their bed, let them lie in it. Now, that lie in it really bothers me terribly. The way I see things, the way they feel is, let them die. They made their bed, we've done enough for them, let them die. These are the people that have been in the system for quite some time. These are the people that you can't seem to help. They don't want the help. But yet, we've been able to help a lot of those people. And I lived with those people. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I guess that's just what God wanted me to be. I guess that's all I can say, because this whole thing is an absolute miracle. I've gotten to a lot of these people. I know these people. I lived with these people. I know how they think. I know how they walk. I know how they talk. I know what's bothering them. The same things that bothered me when I was out there. And I think our program individualizes this. First and foremost, the person, how he feels when he comes into one of our homes. And we adjust to this, because 4 of the 7 board of directors, the original board of directors, were all homeless. So I think we can understand this better than those other organizations. They don't have the time to do this, or the money to do this. And I don't like to put it this way, but we were new, and we took a lot of people that, well, the odds weren't in our favor. These are people that had been in the system for many years, been to every detox, been to every halfway house, sober house, recovery house, whatever, Bridgewater, the women in Framingham, the whole thing. These were the people that society said let them lay in it. They had given up on them.